Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is a progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, progressive, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. We are an independent media outlet that, unlike mainstream media beholden to corporations, we only owe allegiance to you. Remember, you can also send me a tweet at EGBERTOWILLIES. That is at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is Politics Done Right. Welcome to Politics Done Right from the studios of KPFT 90.1 FM, Houston, your community radio station. We have a great program. We have a lot to talk about today. A lot to talk about. Isn't it amazing how easy it is for our president, for Republicans, for neoliberal Democrats to really sell the need that Ukraine has for $33 billion over 5 months to win the war against Russia? It was an existential problem. And I have no problem with that, right? Yes, I want Ukraine to be successful in as much as Ukraine suffers much of the ills that we have from a socio-political point of view. But that said, the better option is for Ukraine to come out ahead. But we could find the money. It's existential. But you know what is existential? People in America that need support from a over-imposing, crushing economic system that prevents them from getting ahead. Where if they just had a helping hand, they could actually grow and make it. If it's for arms, the defense industrial complex gets what it needs. Well, today we are going to have Economist Blair, Keisha Blair. We're also going to talk about student loans and many other important issues of the day. So stay. It's a full program. Hang with us. But you know what? We are going to get busy. Senator Tester of Montana says capitalism isn't working anymore in this instant. He's talking about in rural America. He's talking about meat packers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Let's listen to what he has to say and then take it on the other side, because this is rather important.
Egg production has gotten far more consolidated the 44 years since I took over the farm in 1978.
No Democrat speaks to the concerns of farmers and rural voters more clearly than John Tester. He has performed the political miracle 3 times now of getting elected to the Senate as a Democrat in Montana, a state that has not voted for a Democrat for president since 1992. Robert Leonard's New York Times op-ed this week is titled, "Biden has already done more for rural America than Trump ever did." Robert Leonard describes how the Biden infrastructure bill is bringing necessary improvements where he lives in Iowa, and says, quote, "With more than 450 rural hospitals in danger of closing, with funds from the American Rescue Plan, the Biden administration program, energy rural health care grants will award up to $43 million to benefit 2.2 million people across 22 states. Senator Tester is worried about what increasing monopolistic practices of big business have done to the supply chain for food.
Capitalism isn't working in this particular instance because of concentration and consolidation in the industry. Consumers are paying higher prices because without competition, they're set without regard to what people can afford. Because we've seen a mass exodus off the land. Rural America is drying up. On the other side of the equation, we see consumers that are being treated unfairly in the marketplace because there's no competition. Today, we can address both of those issues with these bills.
And joining us now is the senior senator from Montana, John Tester. And one thing I love about our discussions on this program is anyone in this town of Washington can talk about politics. Not everyone can talk about government, and not everyone can talk about government in a way that everyone can understand it. And The way you approached this subject in that hearing yesterday, with that line, and I've heard you say something like this before, that capitalism isn't working in this spot where we need it to work, which is the efficient delivery of our food products to the marketplace. I mean, that line, capitalism isn't working, is something you might expect to hear from Bernie Sanders somewhere, but it's a John Tester line.
Well, look, it's not working because, as you pointed out, we've got monopolistic nature. The four biggest packers that have control over 80% of the food that's delivered in this country. It's not much different worldwide. For capitalism to work, you have to have competition. And if you have competition, that's good for the folks on the ground, the cow-calf operators in this case. It's good for the small and medium-sized feeders, and it's good for the consumer because it'll help regulate prices. Right now, that's not the case. The ranchers are getting not near enough what they need to stay in business for their product, the calves. And on the other side of the equation, you've got the folks that are buying meat in the meat counter that are paying way, way more than they should. If there was competition in this system, if capitalism was really working, that wouldn't be the case. These bills that were put forth will help solve that problem.
What will they do? What will your legislation do?
Well, basically, I am not for shutting down the big packers. What I am for is getting more transparency and making sure they're following the law. We passed the Packers and Stockyards Act in 1921 because of consolidation in the meat industry. Today, it's more consolidated than it was in 1921. During since the late 70s that I've been on the farm, and I've took over a farm that my folks and grandparents ran before me, we're seeing consolidation happening much quicker. And in the end, it's drying up rural America. These small towns that I knew when I was a kid are just small pieces of that culture because they've dried up. My town, 1,000 people in 74 when I graduated from high school, now has 600. The high school had 160 kids. Now it's got about 40 kids. The truth is that, hardware stores no longer exist. We had 3 grocery stores. Now we've got 1. We had 3 grain elevators. Now we got 0. The problem is that we need some changes here. We need the system to work or our food chain is going to be put at risk. And by the way, if we lose family farm agriculture and family ranch agriculture in this country, that food chain will be put at risk. And I am telling you, democracies don't work unless you've got a fed society.
Okay, I have some news for Brother Tester. Senator Tester, your initial statement was correct. Capitalism is not working, but you added in this instant. And you're talking about on the farms, right? And you've then prefaced and said, I don't want to shut down the big meat packing guys. I don't want to touch, I just want it to be fair. I don't want it to be monopolistic. Here's the reality. Milton Friedman already gave capitalism marching instructions. The only people that matter are the shareholders and the executives, the people who get bonuses. Nobody else matters. It is not their job to do any social issues. You're talking about capitalism should be working as well on the farm. It doesn't. You know how farming should really be working? As a collective. You know what you remember what the milk guys used to do? They pull their milk together. They build milk factories. You remember what the corn guys did at one time? They got together and they built gasohol. They built plants that created alcohol. They worked together as a collective, and together, like some of the orange producers as well, as collectives. Now the capitalists come in and they say, hey, farmer number 1, 2, and 3, I'll give you several $100 or $100,000, several $1 million. All you do is you provide us with this stuff all the time. And then we go ahead and capitalize on your grain transmitter and all these different equipments that processing. We take care of processing for you. We take care of all these things for you and we capitalize it. We create stocks and bonds and all of these different financial instruments so that we can turn your hard work into financial. That it's all about. So you were correct with the first half of your sentence. Capitalism doesn't work. In any instant, however, it only works for the capitalists, and that's a minute number of people. They give others the semblance of it working for you. You know, they make you believe you have a job, but you still have to have credit cards. Let's be frank here, folks. Collectives work. collectives work. Capitalism in your food supply is going to create the same kind of problems it creates in every sort of supply. Let's get that into your heads, folks. Let's remember that. Now that we're getting serious about student loans, a business class, I think, is getting a bit concerned. So they're going to try to say that some people are not really interested in supporting the student loan forgiveness. I paid mine. Why don't you? A lot of these things. Now, look, I'll give my personal experience at the end, but I want you to listen to this, and then we'll go ahead and take it on the other side.
If you forgive all the student loans, they don't get their money back, of course. But what's the dynamic between the politics and money?
I think it's broader than that. And I think actually going into the midterms, I don't know, when you look at the polling on this, there's a whole group of people who are very happy, who desperately want these loans to be forgiven. But by the way, there's a whole group of people who don't want them to be forgiven, in part because they think to themselves, I paid my loans.
Exactly.
Right. I paid my loans back. I don't understand why these guys are going to get a free ride. And so, and other folks who say not only that, they say, look, to make this whole system work eventually, higher education needs to cost less. We can't continue to have these prices go up, and government effectively is pushing that up. So it is like a third rail issue. You would think it wouldn't be, because in so many ways, rationally, you think people just want the money, but there's people on the other side of this issue.
Gene, you get the sense that may be why President Biden keeps kicking the can down the road, because there are a lot of people, if you look at the polls, that say, wait a second, hold on. I spent 15 years paying back my student loan. They're going to just forgive it for somebody else? And so it almost seems like he's like, okay, 4 more months, 5 more months, instead of making a definitive decision.
First of all, you got to start somewhere. Here's the reality, right? When I went to school, 1 semester hour cost $4 for in-state, $40 for out of state. By the time it was time for my daughter to go to the same university, it costs more than 10 times that amount for a semester hour. So let's be clear here. What has really occurred is that over the years, the corporatocracy has stopped paying taxes, requiring more and more and more out of the students' own pockets. I know that some people are going to say, well, these educators, they spend so much money on buildings and XYZ. Look, the real bottom line is we're not collecting enough taxes for people to go to extended college at an affordable rate. The reality is, I believe that all college should be free, and only if you use your college education to create your own company should you be responsible for paying it back. Because here's the kicker. We are educating people, right, to make profits for shareholders and corporations, because they get a base of people ready to work for them without having to have had to pay the taxes to educate them. But not only that, they then give them loans to go to school. So the person who gets out of school, they're paying interest on a loan so that they can make money for shareholders of corporations. It's a vicious cycle that keeps employees, that keep workers as indentured servants. They're always owing to the corporation, either for their loans or owing to the corporations because they've paid to be educated so that they can work in some corporation to make somebody else profit who's sitting down at their pools. Education should be free. You may say, well, that would be wasteful. That devalues my education. That's not a devaluing of the education. What it says is the following. If you are capable of doing it, there shouldn't be a financial barrier to stop you from success. In other words, everybody should have equal access to success. And if you can handle the work and you prove that you handle the work, and while you're handling the work, you continue to maintain your grades, you should be able to go to school free of charge because you are helping society going forward. Well, it seems like Brother Biden is going to do something about it because, well, we don't know what it is exactly, but here is another report and we'll take it on the other side.
Congressman, I know that I couldn't have this conversation if we didn't talk about student debt, which is such an important issue for you. What do you hope to see in the future?
Well, my two asks that I personally asked of the president as my responsibility in that room was to ask two things. One, would he continue to lift the moratorium beyond until the end of the year when it may expire this August? He smiled at me and said that we are going to be very pleased with his decision on that front. Secondly, I said, will you please consider foregoing at least $10,000 in debt or more to every American who has student loan debt? He said, once again, we're going to be very pleased with that. He's working on that already. We'd love to see him eliminate student debt across the board, but anything in that direction is going to be a positive effort, and we look forward to the president doing so.
Yes, but we do need more than just a positive effort. We ultimately need to ensure that going to college, going to trade school, or whatever option post high school somebody wants, that they can be provided that education, either affordable or pay it forward. Because like I said, let's do remember, most people go work for somebody else, and these institutions of education prepare them to work for somebody else. So that somebody else should be vested in that person's education. That somebody else should pay their fair share. There's not magic to that. It is quite simple. Again, let's make sure and keep the narrative right. Let's not allow them to continue to make it seem like by repaying student loan or forgiving student loans is some sort of a giveaway. It is not. It's a repayment for something that needed to have been done from its inception. It is true. Progressive and Democrats have a story to tell. Please listen to what President Obama said and these two pundits have to say, because it is important that this message gets across to Americans before they make a grave mistake and put folks into office who would do nothing than destroy their personal economies. Check this out, and then we'll take it on the other side.
A paycheck, but the problem is all that wage growth that we've been talking about over the last year gets wiped out when you factor in the higher prices.
Yes, although a lot of us worry a lot about inflation at the moment because things like food and gas, they're the prices rising the most. They're the biggest share of the consumption basket of low-income people. On the flip side, to the extent that we're seeing wage growth, it's actually been stronger among low-income people. So perhaps real wages after inflation are actually rising for those folks, even if they're not rising for folks higher up in the income distribution.
President Obama was speaking to our colleague Al Roker today about that good news in the economy. Watch this.
Inflation is a real issue. A lot of it is having to do with the COVID and supply chains, and now Putin's gas tax, essentially, by virtue of his invasion of Ukraine. But the underlying economy, there's a good story to tell. Democrats have to go out there and tell the story. But ultimately, the voters decide on this thing.
Mark, this is what you do. You craft these stories. And how do you talk about those good things? Because what they've done is help the rich, right? For people who have white collar jobs, people who own their homes, people who invest in the stock market, they've saved a lot, they've made a lot. But for those living paycheck to paycheck, things only got worse. How do you tell that good story?
Well, I think Justin made a great point, which is that when you talk about the job market and the job situation, the place where it's really improved is for low economic workers. And the reality is that most of them now can find jobs. Most of them can find jobs that pay more than they were making before. In many cases, a lot more than what they were making before. Is it keeping up with inflation? Not necessarily. But I think we're at a point where the jobs are scarce, the wages are rising, and I think the other factors are bound to kick in. So it could equalize itself over time. And the fact is that there's a great story to tell about jobs and wages.
Now, I want to clarify something. It is true that there are more jobs. It is true that all those things are true, that the jobs are paying more. It is also true that we have inflation. But there's an additional message that Democrats have to put out there. They have to put out there that the corporatocracy are raising prices not because their cost has increased, but because they know the American population has more money, both from the stimulus and from the required higher wages that they're demanding. So in effect, what they're doing is taking back what was given to those who needed themselves growth. So the other piece that the Democrats and progressives need to do is appropriately identify who the villain is or who the villains are, and that is corporations right now. They are choosing. It is important here. Inflation doesn't come out of the sky. Even the way President Obama said it and the way these two pundits said it, they make it seem like inflation is inevitable. They make you believe that somehow these prices had to go up because no, they did not have to go up. They didn't have to go up. These people are pilfering the American people. And that is the message that we have to get across. They have pricing power. The American people don't. Whatever they say the price is, given that the American people have money, they will pay it. In other words, instead of the Americans taking that extra monies that they have to build up their savings, to build up their assets, to save for retirement, the corporate class is taking it all back. And what we have to do as a society, if we're not going to clamp their wings, is we've got to tell the truth. These guys are heathenous monsters who decide that they will not allow the average American person to get ahead because everything they believe is theirs. And I'm not saying this out of spite. I'm not saying this out of being frustrated with the corporate class. It is the evil within that is causing the inflation. Do not sit back there and believe inflation is being caused because we have a shortage of things and people are running to buy it. If we had a shortage of things, the stores wouldn't be stocked. Gasoline lines would be out there, but we have no shortage of gasoline. We have no shortage of products. Therefore, there should be no inflation. We have inflation because they can price it. Do not allow the mainstream media to lie to you, and do not allow anyone to protect what the corporate structure is doing to the American people right now. You want private sector control without regulations? That's what we have right now. Democrats should win 2022. Democrats will win 2022 if they follow some of the rules that many of us in the progressive space have been putting out. I want you to, the argument currently against Democrats is inflation is high. They cannot control inflation. So therefore, throw them out and bring in the anti-democratic group into power. Somehow they're going to do a better job. Of course, we know that's a fallacy, but let's go ahead and listen to this question that Chuck Todd asked one of Bernie Sanders' past or one of Bernie Sanders' subjugates or advocates. And I want you to listen to his reply because it's important. And then we'll take it on the other side. This is something for us all to emulate.
Does the senator accept, though, the idea that the checks that you said were enormously popular actually contributed to our current inflationary problems?
This, again, it hurts my soul around this fight because if you're a Biden administration and other Democrats, this is an opportunity to lean in. What happened with the stimulus checks? We gave money into people's pockets, child tax credit, unemployment insurance benefits, and stimulus checks. What happened when we gave that money out? Corporations came around and stole it. That's what happened. They took it back out of your paycheck. Why? Because they wanted to report not profits, Chuck, record profits. S&P 500, you look at their profits off the charts. That was a choice by corporations. So yeah, I could raise that bag of potato chips by 25 cents. I could increase the cost of this car by $1,000. But everyone thinks there's supply chain snarls out there.
So what you're saying, the inflation issue should be on the corporate.
100%. Lead that fight to say, hey, yeah, maybe there should have been some price increases. But what happened was price gouging, price collusion, corporate power in America trying to reach into your pocket, say, oh, I see you got some money there coming back to me. And if you just look at the record profits of these corporations, that is the fight. That is the fight. People are asking, who the hell is going to take them on? It is the government's responsibility to take that fight on.
I think you have made clear you'd like to see the Democrats have some fight in them. I mean, you've used that word a lot, and I say that
muscularity.
It does seem like that is among the biggest problems.
Right, executive order. I mean, everyone's going to appreciate that. Sometimes these fights are hard. You're going to lose.
Right.
But you got to lean in, whether it's executive orders, putting legislative votes on the floor again, go around the country, wield that authority.
Now, you have to ask the question whether it is that Democrats can't fight or it is that they also know that they are in the pockets, or rather, they are in the pockets of the plutocrats, the executives, the corporatocracy. Let's be clear here. You hear how he said it distinctly. Why do we have inflation? Because the corporations are stealing your money. They know that you got some more money in the stimulus. They know that you're getting more wages, and they're going to take it back away. We've discussed this many times on Politics Done Right. We've also had Dr. Economist Professor Richard Wolff come and tell you pricing power belongs to the corporations. They decide how much to charge. And like I mentioned before, if you don't have shortages of products, which we don't have, if you have people that are buying the same amount of product, which they are, and then the only difference you have is price increases, which is inflation, and also that is reflected into the bottom line of the corporations with record profits, that means that corporations made the choice to create inflation. Again, right now, many Democrats are sitting back and licking their wounds as if they should be held responsible for the inflation rate because of the stimulus package, etc. You notice a question that Chuck Todd asked. That is what they want you to believe. Is Bernie Sanders ready to take responsibility that even though a lot of people like the stimulus, given the stimulus overheated the economy? Given the stimulus did not overheat the economy. Are you saying that people should live in a permanent state of poverty, in a permanent state of want, in a permanent state of need? If you believe that given a stimulus overheated the economy, you are saying that you are privy to an economy that cannot support people living at a certain rate of happiness, of a certain rate of having the appropriate finances. Because if you think giving people what they deserve, and not even what they deserve, less than what they deserve, but what they hadn't had. If you think for 1 minute that just letting people just exist is what your economy stands for, and if for some reason people get a little bit more, it goes into inflation, it doesn't work that way. The billionaires continue to amass their billions during the pandemic. The billionaires continued to pilfer Americans, and they're doing right now. Democrats should be leaning in and pointing out that it's corporate thievery. It's a capitalist thievery that is occurring right now. And until we change the messaging paradigm, until we change it in its entirety and stop allowing the mainstream media, Chuck Todd saying, well, is Bernie ready to accept responsibility for overheating the economy by promoting the stimulus, which everybody likes? Hell no. Bernie's not sorry. Bernie wants more stimulus. We need to take away a lot more money from the billionaires, which they got on your backs. That is what we need to do. When are we going to see the big picture? When are we going to understand the concept that every capitalist knows? What is the price of a product? Whatever the market can bear. In other words, whatever we can steal from you. That is the price of the product. Listen to what we talked about a few days ago with Dr. Richard Wolff. That is what it's all about. Chuck Todd, I'm glad you asked that question, because it should give the impetus to every Democrat to go ahead, every progressive to answer that question. And anyone who doesn't answer that question the way you just heard it answered is in the pockets of the corporatocracy. Ayman Yeldin asked the most important question about these tapes that were released. You know, I've been asking this all week, wondering when does the security of a nation where reporters are responsible for reporting the fourth estate to inform us so that we can make decisions, where do their responsibilities end? Think about what occurred here. We had reporters holding back pertinent information because they want to write a book. Well, it was great to see a host address that. I want you to listen to this, and then we'll take it on the other side.
There's one more angle to the Kevin McCarthy saga that we wanted to discuss tonight, and it has to do with the audio recordings themselves. Two reporters from the New York Times obtained these recordings and waited to release them so they could be used in their upcoming book. And so the question is it okay to hold on to information like this? These journalists are certainly not the first to hold on to explosive information to help promote and sell their books, but when recordings could change the course of history or perhaps have serious political ramifications, shouldn't history win out? This Danielle, set the record straight here. Should this audio have been released as soon as it was obtained, or is it being released at the right time?
Eamon, it should have been released when it was obtained. Right. I actually am tired of journalists holding on to pertinent information that could change the course of history so that they could make money, so that they can sell books. We're talking about our democracy here. This is not something that is light, something that should be overlooked. And journalists, media has a responsibility to tell the truth, to inform the people so that we have an informed citizenry that can make decisions. How can we make decisions about the Republican Party and how they have devolved if we don't have all of the information that is necessary because you want to sell a book, right? Like at some point in time, you have to put your country ahead of capitalism.
She is so right. These reporters, they come across, they got respectability after he released the tape. This is what we have, and in the book we're going to say X, Y, Z. Well, that had a particular effect on whether Trump would have been impeached or not. After hearing Kevin McCarthy say that and others, how many senators would have said, oh my God, it turns out that we probably should impeach this guy because he is a clear and present danger to the country, even if he has 10 more days in office. After all, he has the keys. After all, he is the one who can provide security clearance, et cetera, with those last 10 days that he has left. When are we going to start judging these people as they should? They are the fourth estate. The reason they have the access to be able to get that type of information is because they're journalists. It is their responsibility to use what they've attained to inform the public appropriately. And that they hold these things back for books later on to enrich themselves is the exact reason we continue to be in the situations that we're in today.
Today, we have the honor of having Keisha Blair. Miss Blair is a trained economist and has experience in the public, private, and not-for-profit sector. She was part of the Prime Minister's delegations to World Economic Forum in 2018, as well as the East Asia Summit in Singapore. She led events such as the Most Powerful Women Summit in Montreal, Canada, and the Fortune Global Forum. She is a graduate of the Executive Leadership Program at Harvard University's John F. Kennedy School of Government and has an MSc in Public Policy from Carleton University in Ottawa. She is the author of Holistic Wealth, 36 Life Lessons to Help You Recover from Disruption, Find Your Life Purpose, and Achieve Financial Freedom, and is the founder of Institute on Holistic Wealth. Welcome to Politics Done Right, Miss Blair. How are you doing today?
I'm good, and thank you so much for having me.
Well, we'd have it no other way. Anyway, after getting your information that you touch on all the topics that we discuss here at Politics Done Right. So we're happy to have you. Thank you so kindly for being here with us. How are you doing?
I'm good. And how are you?
I am fine. Well, anyhow, let's get started. What's going on in the economy as you see it today throughout the world?
There's so much going on, so much economic disruption, and I think we're all feeling it in our pockets. We see the rising food prices, rising oil prices. There's high inflation. Interest rates are going up as governments try to stem the high inflation by using that tool of monetary policy. And so people will see their mortgages going up. They'll see the cost of living going up. And it will seem tight because salaries have been stagnant. But that's what's going on. And we know with the Russia-Ukraine war, that has caused several, disruptions to transportation, supply chain disruptions. Several products such as wheat with the Ukraine being the world's breadbasket, have been affected. So I think that's what we're seeing. There have been predictions that it will get worse. We might be going into a recession towards the end of the year.
Let me stop you there, because I hear those predictions all around. What are your thoughts and not the predictions? Because as an economist, what's your own belief as far as when you look at these stats that are really out there? Because I have some myself.
Yeah. Okay. I definitely. So I do think that we will end up in some sort of a recession, based on when you look at history. And I did mention in my book too that, we've seen these crises before. I did mention the 2000 to 2009 period as the lost decade. And I had mentioned in the book too that I'm hoping that this one won't become another lost decade, but it's looking likelier and likelier given what's happening globally and geopolitically. Now, I do think we are headed there, but we have to watch to see what's going to happen. But as an economist, the signs are there, and it's a hard balance, right? With increasing interest rates, it's a hard balance with what's going on with war, with COVID-19. There's so many factors at play.
Ms. Blair, I am not an economist. I'm an engineer, but who studied economics in college as well. And, one of the things that differs between, let's say, engineering and, let's say, the stockbrokers, et cetera, is we don't buy into what I like to call non-math. And, I have you on as one of our, of a leading economist. We're also having Richard Wolff on and a couple other economists on. And what I've been trying to do is probe economists as to what I call the insanity factor of our economic system, where we go through these things. I mean, you just mentioned in your monologue there that you hope this is not a lost decade, but based on how things are going, it just could be again. And unfortunately, based on how things work, I agree with you, sadly. But the insanity of doing things over and over again the same way puzzles me. So my question to you is, isn't it time for us to revamp the current model, the current economic system that we have, to one that actually makes sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm all for economics getting a refresh. I'm all for the economy getting a refresh. It's something I talk about in Holistic Wealth and why I even came up with Holistic Wealth. If we look at it, at the economy from a macro perspective, there's so much income inequality. We have a racial wealth gap. We have certain groups that are shut out of this capitalist system. It's one of those pet peeves of mine too. And I see you smiling because it's an economy that's exploitative. We pull, and we're not giving enough back. We're not giving enough back. And the system hasn't worked for a lot of folks. It hasn't worked for a lot of our minority communities, for our women, children, the most vulnerable among us. And so I definitely think we need a redistribution. I'm all for, when we talk about the racial wealth gap, we talk about reparations. I'm all for, policies like that, because I believe that there's some wrongs that weren't made right before. And we're going down a path that's not sustainable. COVID-19 showed us that it's not sustainable, right? And we look at the interplay between wealth, health, or mental health and all of that. It's showing us, and even the environment, it's showing us that we were not on a path to sustainability. We were doing the opposite. So definitely, it's one of those things where we definitely need to not think about going back to that old normal. We need to think about creating this new normal and what we want our post-pandemic lives to look like.
Now, where I think it's so important for what you write, what you promote, what you talk about to our audience and others, especially since you have the pedigree, the credentials to say it. I don't, you do, is to that people understand that an economy isn't something that is divine, or our economic system isn't divine. It is actually man-made. And notice I didn't say person-made. I said man-made for certain people who are invited into the game. And we need more people like you out there, not just activists like myself, letting people know how this is an economy that's actually behaving exactly as it should, don't you think? Or exactly as it was designed.
Exactly as it was designed. And, it's unbelievable the level of income inequality that we have right now. And I mentioned in the book that it's the number one economic problem. It's the number one problem that we have in the world. When you look at the growth in incomes of billionaires during the first half of COVID-19, when you look at certain companies and how they profited from this, it's just unbelievable. And so we've set up an economy where a few benefit and the vast majority don't. We saw where the deaths took place. We saw the people who were most vulnerable out there, the essential workers, transportation drivers, mechanics, people going out there and facing it and dying, while others were more protected. Now, I do believe that we can, if there's that will, we can shape our economy to be more inclusive and to be more equitable. And I think that's the route we need to go when we look at our post-pandemic lives. We can absolutely reshape. We can absolutely start to right some of those wrongs. And we can start to look at having a post-COVID economy that's more equitable.
Ms. Blair, in the context of your book, then, because a lot of this is covered, what can we do to empower folks? What are the 36 life lessons, or at least some of the 36 life lessons that folks should actually take into making a betterment for us all?
Yeah, so it can be looked at the personal level as well as the state level. And when we talk about, let's say, macro, the state level, in the back of the book, I have this holistic wealth index that is kind of like a framework that organizations can use, that state level governments can use.
I don't want to interrupt, but I have to. I don't want to interrupt, but I have to. What exactly is holistic wealth?
Yeah, so holistic wealth is the interconnection between these critical pillars. So it's the financial wealth. It's the mental and emotional health. It is your physical health and your life purpose and spirituality and relationships as well in that. So all of that, I think, is that interplay between all of those factors, and why we need to look at our economy more holistically. We need to look at our personal finances and our lives more holistically. We've seen the great resignation wave. That's also part of that organic trend towards, I want to live a life that's more authentic. I don't want to be just a number or stat. I want to live that life that gives me that balance, that joy, that meaning. And that's what we've seen some trends here that have been basically predicated on this whole holistic wealth concept now for some time. It's just that it wasn't there before in terms of a book, and it wasn't there in terms of our vocabulary or way of communicating it. But all the trends that we're seeing now with the passion economy worth over 80 billion, with the great resignation wave, with people looking at how they can live a more meaningful life. I mean, COVID-19 has spurred that. So when we think about holistic wealth, when we think about organizations, when we think about governments around the world, this is a tool, this is a framework that we can all use to shape this post-pandemic era. And it's so funny, in the book I talk about a little about economics too, and how we focus too much on our so you have these moral resources and the economic resources, and we've focused too much on our economic resources, not enough on our moral resources. And our moral resources are our relationships, they're our people, our labor force, the partnerships, the way we collaborate to help each other, the way we reach out to help each other. Those are the moral resources that we'll need to pull in. We need to have an economy that's more focused on our moral resources when we shape our post-pandemic world, rather than those economic resources that we always think about. And so what we think about is in extractive terms, in exploitative terms. when we think about it in more moral terms, then I think we'll come closer to what we want that life to look like, what we want our economies to look like.
Ms. Blair, I mean, I could not have said that any better. You're speaking directly to everything that I preach. Thank you. I mean, you do not know what it means to me to have an economist in the Western world say that I'm going to have Richard Wolff on. I don't know if you ever heard of Richard Wolff right here in the United States. He teaches at not Yale, Princeton, I think it is, and he's going to be on with us. And he speaks the same language. And I've been trying to get more economists that can come out to the folks and let them understand that it's not solely about that economic piece that you speak about. Because think about this, Ms. Blair. Think about this. We have in corporations right now, the executives that, what the workers have been going through over the last several years.
Yeah.
And we also know that corporate profits are sky high. Even in they are sky high. And we have all these guys sitting pretty up there saying, well, I got me a great bonus. I mean, look how great we were able to increase profits, increase productivity. Not realizing that wasn't you doing it.
Right.
It was those guys down there doing it. But you're taking the spoils. Our economy is designed to be extractive, and the ones that don't work do it. And it's folks like yourself and the book that you promote that promotes bringing people up that makes the difference. So, I mean, you don't know how happy I am to have yet another economist validating these particular these particular issues. So tell me, how can we, first of all, I mean, it is hard for those who are in Panama, we would say, viviendo la vida loca, living that life. How do we get those that are living that life understand that what they're doing really is promoting what I call antiseptic slavery of the masses? How do we allow them to see that?
Yeah, I think it's just what we're doing here now. And it's unbelievable because I think what they're doing isn't sustainable long term.
Thank you.
It isn't sustainable. It's an unsustainable model. You have to look at, you only have to look at what's happening with Amazon, with Tesla. Workers are going to wake up. They're going to realize that this has not served them. It's not serving their families. This is becoming life and death. And some of the decisions that workers are making right now, whenever they step out to go to work, have been life and death during COVID-19. And COVID-19 has really shed light on that. The fact that it really is unsustainable. So they're building company models that are unsustainable. And they're building models that no longer work and will no longer work. That's why we have things like the passion economy, where workers are getting up on Etsy, they're going on Shopify to create their own businesses. They're going on different platforms to create their own business and really tap into their passions, into their skills and what they can provide. And so I think we're going to see a blossoming of more of that. The Great Resignation wave, when it started in 2020, people were saying, oh, maybe this will fizzle. As economists, we have not seen it fizzle. It's gotten worse. It's gotten more structured, more solidified. And I think it's something that they're going to have to wake up and realize. And companies they are waking up and they are realizing. So let's hope that it's for the good of all, it's for the benefit of all workers, that they do wake up and realize it's not sustainable. And of course, there are people out there, other economists like myself, who are also talking about this, trying to raise more awareness. You're also talking about it, and people are talking amongst themselves. I think we will see some change, hopefully for the better for all of us, so that we have a more economic model, a sustainable economic model.
Gar Alperovitz, he's an economist, a professor out here at, I think, I don't remember I don't remember where it's at. He's a historian as well, which university he works with. But he started to talk about the collective, where instead of Exxon being run by all these executives, et cetera, that it's they have a collective body, and they grow together or they fail together. And if they fail, they fail. If they grow, they grow. But everybody partake of the spoils. It is, as you said, it is something that I think, given the unsustainability of the economic system that we have, that we're going to have to get to. Now, fighting that 10% that controls everything, those that we call the managerial level, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, they're powerful. They're the ones that control the media. They're the ones that control everything. So let me give an example. Programs like mine actually get throttled. So I don't know if you know the term throttle on the internet, so we get throttled. So what we do is we have to go around it using old technologies and all of that to get our information to others. And it just slows down the process of educating the masses. But again, what you do, what you write, what you promote, and what others do, I think it is so essential for us to eventually break that glass. So before we go, tell us a little bit about in more specific to your book now, as opposed to just specific to what we're talking about. Talk a little bit about your book and why you think folks should get it, what they can get out of your book.
Yeah, absolutely. So the book is Holistic Wealth, 36 life lessons to help you recover from disruption, find your life purpose, and achieve financial freedom. And as the book title suggests, there are 36 chapters there that cover off a whole bunch of different lessons that help you to really, find meaning, purpose in life, and of course, in terms of that financial pillar to achieve financial freedom. And I think, with what we started off talking about with the economy and the high inflation and people really feeling it in their pockets, it's a really good time for us to focus on, the financial piece, on the mental health piece, and all of that's covered in the book. And there's strategies in there that people can use in terms of getting out of debt, how you budget, your money management, investing for the long term. And of course, there are pieces in there in terms of, like finding a personal mission and how you write out your personal mission statement and living with purpose and meaning. And so this book has been, very dear to me. It stems from my personal story of having been widowed at only 31 and having to go through that grief and really, go through that disruption and master it. And so there's a whole thesis in the book about mastering the art of recovery from disruption. And I know we're all collectively in that space right now, even if you haven't lost a loved one, or even if you haven't, gone through any major disruption aside from COVID, that we are still in this collectively. We are still in this period of disruption where we're looking for answers, and we're looking for a way out. We're looking for a way to craft that life that we really want. So this book is a tool in that toolkit. It's very good for really getting practical tips and strategies for crafting that, living a life of holistic wealth. And so it's available everywhere online right now, and in bookstores, and people can just grab a copy. It's also a great gift to give, and it's so in line with what we've been talking about and how people can really take hold of their lives, get their power back. Because I know with this economy, a lot of people feel powerless. A lot of people feel like they've lost control of their lives because of the type of income inequality and the wealth gap that we've seen. But here are some strategies here that can make you feel more empowered to take the decisions you need to own your life and to take back some of that control. So I'm happy to share it. And I'm glad that, we can have this conversation, because there are things we can do. It might feel like, everything's out of control, but we do still have a lot of control in terms of our own personal lives.
Let me tell you, I never feel out of control. I always feel in control and going out there and getting a damn thing done. So, and that's what I try to promote on my program. And that's why I have people who think the same way, like you went out there and did something about it to empower others. So I think that is just wonderful that's out there. And I definitely want to promote not only personalities, but books and all of that, that's empowering people as opposed to being, as you mentioned before, that extractive, taking something and leaving nothing back. The last question I always ask my distinguished guests is, what would you have liked me to ask you that I didn't?
Wow, that's a tough one.
It's usually so.
It is tough. I can't think of anything. And I can't think of anything right now. I think the points that I brought forward are points that were perfect for the show and for people listening in. But yeah, I think it's been great. I can't think of anything.
Well, you know what? That means I kind of did my job. So look, I appreciate that. Look, Miss Keisha Blair, a trained economist and with extensive experience, and the author of Holistic Wealth, 36 Life Lessons to Help You Recover from Disruption, Find Your Life Purpose, and Achieve Financial Freedom. It's been my honor to have you on Politics Done Right. Thank you so kindly for having been here.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for having me.
You can listen and or watch Politics Done Right Mondays through Fridays on Facebook Live at facebook.com/politicsdoneright or on YouTube Live at politicsdoneright.com/YouTube. Please do not forget to follow me on Twitter for updates. My Twitter handle is @Egberto Willies, @EGBERTOWILLIES. But don't you forget, listen to us live on air at KPFT 90.1 FM on Thursdays at noon and at Fridays at 11 a.m. all Central Time. Please get one of my several books out there. As I see it, Class Warfare, the only resort to right-wing doom, for a contribution of $120. It's worth it. How to talk to your right-wing relatives, friends, and neighbors for a contribution of $120. How to Make America Utopia, take away the economy from those who rigged it, for a pledge of $120. Get any two of those books for $200, any three of those books for $250. The contributions for my books go directly to support our station, KPFT 90.1 FM. Alternatively, folks, please get your basic KPFT only membership for $40, a Pacifica only membership for $25, or choose from one of our many other gifts for your contribution. Just go to kpft.org, choose Politics Done Right for the program, and select an option either for our books or something else to support the station. It is definitely worth it. Please remember to keep your community radio station in your minds. Keep KPFT on your mind. Talk about it. Tell your friends about it. Tell them you know about this station in town, 90.1 FM Houston, that needs your support. That is there to provide that nourishment that we need. KPFT 90.1 FM Houston. Well, folks, that's it for today. You know how I'm going to end this baby. My name is Egberto Willies. This is Politics Done Right. And you know how I end this baby. I am what? Out.
Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is a progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, progressive, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. We are an independent media outlet that, unlike mainstream media beholden to corporations, we only owe allegiance to you. Remember, you can also send me a tweet at EGBERTOWILLIES. That is at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is Politics Done Right.